Heyo there, it's Sven. And in today's video, I'm going to be going down to Lake Michigan, gathering some clay, purifying it, and then doing my best to make an ocarina. So let's see how that goes. Alrighty, fun part now is getting down. If I was that tree, it'd be really easy, but I don't really want to go that way. Plane. So gotta get past that disgustingness. Oh. Alrighty then, let's see. Some of these roots. Perfect. There we go. And now to recollect my bucket and knife. Which is somewhere. Bucket, easy. Knife, a little harder to see. But I do see it. Right here. Push it through. Perfect. So many years ago, down in there was a gray type of clay that was super smooth and silky and worked well. Right here is clay, but it's really coarse, full of impurities, and it's not my first choice if I can help it. Right down here by all those sumacs, many years ago, probably 10 years ago now, I saw a band of gray clay instead of this reddish stuff, and I fired a pot out of it, and it was much smoother, much higher quality, but there wasn't that much of it, and these cliffs change every single year. Back then, this wasn't even a climb. This all eroded since then. So there's actually a video on my YouTube of me climbing it. But I'm hoping I can find it again, but there's no guarantee. And if not, here's a lot of the red clay exposed. A lot of this is deep red clay, so it's actually not going to be affected by roots or that much of that. But unfortunately, this is around where the gray clay was, and it's all this now, so it got worn away quite a bit. Also, unfortunately, I got to get down here somehow. I'll make it happen, but yeah, if worst case, I can always collect some of this. It looks like good stuff, but bucket goes down first, I guess. This is where this knife comes into handy. All this is super slick, hard clay that I can't get a handhold on, but I can take this and give myself an anchor just to put some of my weight on, not all of it. Any little crevice like that, something to grab with my big toe. Now I can move down to this, lower myself another crevice. There we go. This stuff might not be too bad. It's actually pretty decent looking clay, but I'm gonna see if I can find that mystical gray clay from my youth a little longer before I resort to this. Looks pretty clean, but I really want that gray clay. Oh, let's go. What's this? I think I just found my gray clay. So right here you can see much grayer in color than up here where it's red. The color difference in person is much different, very much different. But you can see I can grab this red clay and then maybe a chunk of the grayer stuff, put them next to each other, and you can really see the color difference between the two. I'm gonna gather both of them because I don't actually know if this is properly my gray clay. It looks like it, but it was 10 years ago, and there's a good seam here, so I'm gonna grab some of this gray clay. You can see it's coming out in sheets. I'm gonna dig in a little bit, get some of the good deep stuff, and then I'm going to go back to that other quarry and pick up some red clay, and maybe I'll just make 2 ocarinas, see if I can gauge which type is better, the gray or the red. But yeah, here's actually amazingly perfect. You have the red on top and the gray on the bottom, really showcases the difference right here. You can see the gray clay tends to be a lot more like layery. This doesn't seem to be as layery, the red clay. I don't know why that is. I don't know what that makes a difference, but I do remember the gray clay firing better. So I guess we'll just get to mining. Gray clay. Knock some of the impurity parts off. It's gonna have a whole bunch of rocks and stuff in it, but that's what the purification process is for. There we go. Gray clay. Dig some of this out. 100% gonna grab a couple of red chunks on the way back up. That'll do. Sure. That looks about good. All right, so back at the red clay quarry, I'm gonna gather some of this good red clay here and do a comparison. You can see this is good blocks. These make good blocks. This stuff here is quite grainy. I'm sure I can like fix that with processing, but why go for grainy when they have some smooth bits here, some really good looking stuff. So I'm going to try and gather a bunch of that, and we'll go from there. Just for now, these like iron oxides, I don't know if they will affect it, so I'm just going to scrape these off as best I can. I'm not going to be super big on it, but any of these like iron oxide things, I don't assume they're going to help. So all these roots, all that yuckiness, does not hurt to get them off now while you can. But oh, this is some good quality red clay. It's better than I've seen back in my youth. Really seems smooth and clean. Let's get some more of this. It helps that this is fresh fallen, so it's very not tainted with sand and all of that other junk, which is nice. I mean, it still has some sand like this. As much as it's a good piece of clay, I just don't need the impurities to filter out later. So I may as well go for stuff that's clean while I have a whole bunch of it. One way to get cleaner clay, to open up these big boulders, I imagine, cleave off the outsides, split it. You get a lot of these rocks, but there shouldn't be the roots inside, which is nice. So that's one option. I'm not sure how clearly this comes across, the difference in color and texture. We'll see if I was right with the gray being better. Time to carry a bucket of clay and a GoPro up the cliff. I can do it. All right. That was a struggle, but I did eventually get up it. I just have this to go, and I don't want to destroy these bird nests. Oh man. All right. Hauling this bucket up these cliffs is not easy. But at least I'm to the grass. Okay, so got my clay. Now I'm just gonna fill this bucket with water. Earwig. That should be good. I didn't mean to throw you in there, buddy, but whatever. Come here, little dude. Sorry. It's just gotta soak. Time to mix this up, see how it goes. Get the consistency. This all needs to be broken up into a fine paste, but you can see the clay is definitely working. The longer this sits, the better, to really ferment it and get all the particles good and separated. Ideally, what I'll end up doing is I'll be mixing this up into a fine slurry, and I'll just take this water here and let this settle out, and that should give me all the clay particles that I need without all the chunks and all of that, because the clay that's suspended in the water right now is about as fine as it can be. So if I just mix this up and break it into fine chunks and then just pour this water onto a plate or something, let it seep out on its own, it will be high quality as I can get. So yeah, I got to mix it up, get all the particles out, increase the surface area as much as possible, and all of that. All right, so now I have my slurry, and I'm just taking all these clay chunks and breaking them. Unfortunately, as I was climbing the cliffs, the gray and the red clay kind of got seriously mixed, and that's going to make it really hard to do my comparison. I don't think it'll be that much of a problem if I just do them together, to be honest though, because this red clay is turning out to be way better quality than the red clay I used before all those years back. And I'm imagining the reason for that is because when I was young, the way I processed the clay was just by crushing it into a powder and then manually picking out the rocks. And like, by crushing it, I mean lazily crushing it. And I also picked from the surface when it was all full of sand and everything, and that's just not ideal. First thing I did wrong, I picked the bucket without holes to be the cleaning tank. It needs to be the settling tank. This one has holes, so I need to transfer all of these contents into this one. And it's important that I get all of this out, because I'm going to need to wash it right after. Clay. before I lose all my water in that bucket. Pretty important that I get this pretty clean. Okay, good enough. I'm gonna take this grate to filter. Now what I need to do is stir this up big time. Make sure that the water is as saturated with fine clay particles as possible. So I'm just gonna mix and mix and mix and mix and mix. Just trying to suspend as many clay particles as I can, while leaving all the heavies on the bottom, all the stuff that isn't very fine. I'm just gonna mix all this up. Now I'm gonna pour through the screen just the water. Oh, a lot of waste there, that's my bad. There we go, decant the water. And now I should have, yeah, what feels like to me is just water. So now I'm going to take this, fill it back up. And repeat the process. Clean this off a bit, get all that junk off there, don't need the grass. Because one single bit of grass is all it takes to pop something you spent hours making. I think I'll do that just a little bit more since I still have some in the bucket. You can see all this heavy, unrefined junk is in there. But if I just go in, mix it up, suspend the light particles, the fine, light, super smooth particles away from the base junk, and then pour that off. I can let that settle. That looks about good. I'm going to let this settle. I can already see 2 pieces of grass that got in there already. Rinse my hand off. Pick that out. Pick that out. I'm just going to go in, give it a stir. Make sure this is all, yep, it's all just fine, watery. Doesn't feel like there's any clay in there at all. I can, once it's settled and the top water's clear, I can just take a siphon off the extra water and do it as many times as I want until this is all clear. So yeah, cool. All right, so the water isn't completely clear, but it is cleared up a lot. Some bugs in there, whatever. I'm gonna try and skim the bugs. I'm gonna try and skim the bugs out so they don't create issues later. But as you can see, the water's pretty it's not clear, but it is much more clear than it was. And then you have this water here, which is pretty clear. That's because this is a lot more chunky and this is a lot more fine particles. But right now I'm going to siphon the water from here into this bucket again so I can remix all that up, get the fine particles out, pour it back in, just to really filter down all of that into fine particles. So all right, so I have this up on a bucket. It settled all night. I stirred it up a little bit putting it on top of here, but that's fine. And the idea right now is that all that fine sediment that was in this bucket has mostly settled to the bottom in a cloud, and right now I'm just going to siphon off the top more clean water layer back into here so I can mix it up again, finally suspend a whole bunch more particles, and then pour it back in. And in this method, I should be able to reduce the clay from a chunky, rocky, sandy form into a good, clean, consistent, fine, super fine particle form. So I just gotta wait until this siphons down. As you can see, the water coming through is not murky and chocolate milky. It's actually pretty clean, which is a good sign, because if this were stirred up, you would see like chocolate milk going through there, meaning most of the clay has settled down to the bottom. Nice. Okay, so now you can see we have the consolidates of the clay, still very soupy, I guess. Like you can see, it's pretty milky, but it's a lot thicker than it was. And this is all extremely fine. I can run my finger through it and not feel a single thing. It's kind of like it kind of feels like running my finger through milk, actually, about that consistency, which means it's all very fine particles, nothing clumpy, nothing sandy, rocky, all of that garbage, which is perfect. Okay, so for the past couple days, I've been draining the water that's settled out of here. This junk out of there. I've been draining the water that comes to the top, and all the clay comes to the bottom. I just did a mix on this, and I noticed there's a lot of grit on the bottom, so I want to see what that's about. So I might filter that out, I might not, but to be sure, I'm going to pour all of this clay into a new bucket. Just look at this bottom and see what that grit is about. I might actually spread this between two buckets now that I know this one doesn't leak, so that way I can have some I can use. All of this excess I'm gonna get down as much as I can, but if I spread it between several different buckets, it'll dry faster. Yeah, I'll spread it between these buckets. This seems to be a good amount of clay. I can't tell if that's actually sand on the bottom. It feels like sand on the very bottom. I might need to pour this out all the way. I'll do that, yeah. Oh, that's definitely sand on the very bottom. Don't like that. Pour off the clay layer, all the clean, unsandy clay. Of course, some sand is going to get in there, but the least of it as possible is preferable. You can actually see right on the bottom that coarse sand. You can see it right there. That's not clay. It doesn't stick to itself. And it doesn't wet the same way. It doesn't become clay-like. When I mix it with water, it's gritty. Yeah, okay. So I was right about that. So I just need to softly scrape the clay off the sand layer. It's actually separating pretty well, the clay from the sand. That's nice. There's gonna be some losses as always, but now you can see on the bottom this really thick, coarse material. You can just see in my hand how coarse that is. All the heaviest particles that aren't the fine ones. Ugh, very, very coarse, very sandy. As you can see there, it's mixed with a lot of clay, but of course it might be clay. It just might be too thick particles for me to want to use. So all this I'm going to rinse out, and I'm going to spread that clay between these two buckets. Now I can spread this clay slip water out as I can between these two buckets and avoid another sandy situation. So, all right, there's the finished product. Just needs a couple days to dry out completely, and I'll be able to use it. Yeah, awesome. You can see it's thickening. You can definitely feel it's thickening, but all right. I think it's important for y'all to see some of the unprocessed clay, the dregs that I pulled out of it in this refinement process. You can really see how gritty, and there's a stick, and there's leaves, and there's rocks. Like there's a big old rock right here, and it's all hard. It's not like you could mold this into something and use it, but it'll be super gritty. You'll constantly be pulling out rocks like this one, leaves like that one. Yeah, and it's all coarse and not a fine grain texture. So this refinement process is all to get this out of it. All right, so I decided, in the interest of time, I finally became intelligent and thought it would be a good idea to spread my clay out by as much surface area as possible by using my various gold pans. And laying them out to dry as such in the sun. It's been doing a really good job already. It's like 7 times better than it would have been before. If it over dries, that's fine, I can re-wet it, but ideally I want to catch it right as it's done at the perfect consistency, so I can put it into a ball and store it in a plastic bag for future use. But yeah, it's good to mention, while my fingers are covered in clay, I'm going to mix it every now and again to make sure that the top isn't drying out significantly faster than the bottom. I don't want to do this too many times, because every bit of clay on my fingers that I don't use is waste, that I need to dry off, or get off my fingers, I guess. And as it dries more and more, it becomes more and more sticky. But I don't want the bottom to be wet and the top is cracked and dry. So I've come to a realization: why am I just pushing good, proper consistency material back into the wet clay when I could take a bag that won't allow more moisture to escape and just harvest it? It's like around this edge seems to be some material that's of a proper consistency for working. Maybe a little wet, but that's fine because it'll dry out as I work on it. I can harvest this, and then I can put it in the bag and consistently do that. If it's a little too wet, which it is, I can just take some of this dry stuff, mix it in there, which will wet that, and I can just take this proper consistency material, put it in a Ziploc bag or any other airtight bag, and I can just continuously harvest like this. That makes a lot more sense to me, and I'm kind of sad I didn't think of that before, because I would have had a lot more material already harvested. And then I'll work it into a perfect consistency. So yeah, not gonna bore you with a million years of this, but in the end I'll show you what I get. There we go. It's in this bag, should stay nice and wet, and then I can just continuously fill this up more and more as I get more, adding to this ball, making a good consistent texture that'll last ages without me needing to re-wet it. Cool. And with any luck, I'll come back when this bag is full. There it is, all that clay refined. There's still a lot in the buckets, but I don't need all that for the project I'm going to be doing in the next video, or this video, I don't know yet. But you can see I got a hefty ball of it. I'm going to estimate it's probably roughly two and a half kilograms, maybe somewhere around there. Or I don't know, 5, 6, 7 pounds, 5 or 7 pounds, 5 or 6 pounds, something like that. I'm gonna seal it, degas the bag as best I can, then clean this up. There we go. Make sure it's airtight. It is, and time to move on. Heyo there, it's Sven, and in today's video I'm going to be using that clay I gathered to make an ocarina. Alright, these two sides are done. Now to work on this one. Take this, wet it a little bit so I don't stick. Beat this end up so it's all flat. Alright, there it is, more or less how it needs to be.